Hi, all those who are listening, watching. This is Alex of Alex and DJ Watch a Doc. Let's get this started with my good friend over here. Who's he?
What's up, everybody?
Why,
I'm
he's
DJ.
There he is. Thanks for tuning. This is a rough one. It was my choice. We watched Collective, which was a documentary that was nominated for an Academy Award in 2021. Just was nominated. So I thought, let's check it out. And also, it's foreign, And I said, hey, let's do something foreign, subtitles, switch it up from all those glitzy, glammy, Netflixy type documentaries that have all that, the lighting and the thing. This was quite to the contrary of that in many ways, actually. I was going to say, actually, before we even get into the content of it, I wanted to talk about the style of it, because the content is a nightmare. The fact that it was the opposite. There was no confessionals to the camera.
Yeah.
Right. It was just very dry and gray and bleak. In fact, it reminded me of the British Office when you hear like the background sounds of the Office.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Did you catch it?
Yeah, somehow still even less bleak than the British Office, so.
Somehow, yeah. They really, it's amazing what Gervais was able to bring to it in terms of it being a horrific scenario to work in.
It reminded me of, and I read a couple reviews that made the same comparison, it reminded me of Spotlight. Obviously, Spotlight was a fictional, the movie was based on real event, but it was a Hollywood retelling of, the priest scandal in Boston and the overall kind of Catholic Church. And it reminded me of the old movie, which I just watched like during the pandemic for the first time, All the President's Men, with Robert Redford and based on them, the whole Watergate scandal. It was really cool to just see reporters doing their job and trying to, and the politicians. So the style was, we'll get into that, but I guess if people haven't watched it, we should tell them what it's about and what makes it so horrific. It is about a nightclub in Romania, Bucharest, Romania, that was set ablaze. A random fire started in the middle of a concert, and many, many people died. And then they died during the fire, and then after the fire, they were not equipped to handle the burn victims, and they let a lot of people die who did not need to die. So it was just tragedy piling on top of tragedy. It was a heartbreaking movie.
It was the tragedy of the event, but also the tragedy of corruption, and that was the the alternate title could be Peeling an Onion, because this one kept getting stinkier and stinkier. It went from one story to another. Went from the story of that to the story of this corruption, or the fact that most people died afterwards in the hospital due to sepsis because of the fact that there was this pyoanic bacteria, they called it. Pyocyanic bacteria.
Pyocyanic,
which I looked it up. I was like, I never heard of such a thing. They kept saying it over and over again. It's like some kind of like a toxin that this bacteria releases to, I guess, fight competition. It's not the good bacteria. It's not that the
I think staph is a pyosonic bacteria. There's a bunch of different bacteria that fall under pyosonic, and I'm pretty sure staph is one of them. You're right. It's the one you don't want to get.
No, it's not something that you purchase at the health food store to have during meals. Anyway, it was so that, but then it turned into the political corruption. There was like so many. There was corrupt doctors and health managers, and it just kept going. And then you have a health minister who had to resign, and then a new health minister comes in, and then we're following him. Like, he went from following the journalist, Catalan, to following this health minister, Vlad, the health minister, and it just and then it turned out to be like, oh, this is now a story about the whole populist wave of politics that has completely engulfed the whole of the world, and then you realize, oh, geez, this is depressing on a global scale.
Yeah, it was like you said, if you want to use that onion analogy, like every time they peeled a new layer, you're like, how much more can I take of this, man? But
right.
the fire at the beginning, we have to talk about that. I mean, there were two scenes in this movie that just stuck with me. Like, both of them punched me in the face and made me hurt. Like, I hurt while I was watching it. The fire scene at the beginning, the actual fire, they introduced the concept of the fire and talked about how people died during it, and then kind of moved on. And then about 5 minutes in, they showed this concert with this, like, you know, heavy metal band playing a song about corruption, and they had already alluded to the corruption in the Romanian government, so you felt like maybe this was just kind of B-roll showing the times and the environment. Yeah. But then the concert, after they finished playing, they're like, okay, thanks everybody, and then all of a sudden there's a little spark on the ceiling. They're like, oh, that's not part of the show. Does anybody have a fire extinguisher? And it's so, like, innocuous, and then all of a sudden the fire turns into a huge fire, and then everybody's stampeding to get out, and you're watching real-time footage on people's cell phone of them dying in this fucking fire, man. Like, you're watching people dying, and it sucker punches you. You're like, whoa. Totally. I thought we were... I didn't know this was happening.
Yeah, the documentarian, he knew what he was doing. He surprised us with that one. Because, yeah, exactly. You're like, wait a second. This is the event? You didn't tell me that I was about to watch the event? And the fact that it felt so real, but also felt... It was surreal because I just didn't expect it to happen. So it felt a bit like you're watching this fire just blaze across the ceiling, and you're thinking, "Oh my God, wait a second, what am I watching?" It felt like something out of a fictional film, not a documentary. It felt like, because it felt like a horror scenario. It was horrific, and
yes.
And after that, I mean, I thought, like, oh, okay, we're just getting started. I don't know if I can take this movie. I really was like, I don't know if I could take, like, almost 2 hours of this.
I know. And I had this thought. I was like, you know, when I list our podcast on the podcast network, you have to, like, label what your podcast is. And you have 3 sections that you can choose. And our number 1 section is comedy. Like, for Alex and DJ Watch a Doc, I'm like, I don't know where we're finding the comedy in this, man. Holy shit.
Yeah, no. That's putting a certain kind of pressure on us right now today. Yeah, maybe we should have a disclaimer that if you're tuning in for a comedy, you might want to skip to the next one. Hopefully, we'll try to pick something a bit lighter next time.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna be able to find comedy in this, but I mean, and also you kind of alluded to the fact that we've been watching kind of the glitzy, glamorous Netflix style documentaries. Like, even last week when we were watching Last Breath, you never felt like he was going to die on the ocean floor. It felt like watching a Hollywood movie in the sense that you were like, everything's going to be okay. Even when he was twitching and everything, you were like, he's still going to make it by the hand of God. Like, you just felt it. This movie offered no such relief. It was like, no, dude, you're about to watch some horrific shit go down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like, first, here's some dry but exasperating moments in a journalist's office, in regards, and also these press conferences where you've got ministers clearly lying and being a smartass about it. That one guy saying something about well, you know, these are accredited officials. I mean, what do you propose that we have extraterrestrials investigate, dear sir? And it's like, could someone give him a flurry of slaps? Because I need some kind of relief from this. And they go, oh, would you like some relief? Yeah, we can give you some relief. How about this beautiful lady who's being photographed for all of the disfigurement that occurred because of this fire? And then they're like, oh, okay, that feels terrible as well. And it was, I mean, but what it was, it really did do a good job of presenting the idea of the necessity of journalism, right? It did a good job with that.
Yeah, they had one line I want to say that line you said about him saying, should we bring in extraterrestrials, dear sir? That stuck with me too. I was like, I want to murder this dude right now. And
so irritating.
That line stuck with me, and another line that stuck with me is exactly what you were talking about. The main journalist said, I forget the exact quote, but when he said, when the press goes easy on the government will mistreat the people. So it really highlighted just how important the function of the fifth estate, is that what you call journalism?
I think it's fourth. I think fourth estate is journalism.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah. I
Fifth
could be
estate
wrong.
is
Maybe you're right.
the internet. I don't know. I was trying to sound smart, and as
I
soon
could
as
be
I
wrong.
started
I could be
going
wrong.
down that road,
It
I
might
knew
be
it was
fifth.
wrong.
I think I read recently that it said fourth, but anyway, you could be right, and that person was wrong, and maybe they misinformed me. But the point is that I agree with you, and also he was really, because those moments of outrage when he was on the television show and they had those other slicksters trying to be smart ass about it. It's almost like saying like, why are you even investigating this? Why are you bringing it? It's almost like, why are you bringing us down with this truth? And that's what I think when he said that, and because at first I thought, because he seems so low key that I think, oh no, are they going to tear him apart because he just doesn't express himself the way that they do? And no, he left them silent, and he just said, this is the job I have, like this is the duty that I have. And I mean, it was every level, the corruption, and I've read that the corruption would have been like left over from during the communist regime as well, the Ceausescu regime, that it's almost like it's just people were so used to things being run that way, so corrupt, that this is just more of the same. And it got to that point where the health minister is saying, like, how much worse does it have to get? Like, what else has to come up for things to change?
Yeah. I mean, it was revealed that Hexapharma, the main distributor of the disinfectant in all these hospitals in Romania, was diluting their disinfectant 10 times. 10 times. They were virtually ineffective. And even after this report came out, they were still distributing this diluted disinfectant to the hospital. And Vlad, the new health minister, was absolutely flabbergasted. He was like, what? In any reasonable country, this would be off the market. What do I have to do? Like he didn't understand.
There are rules. You got to follow the rules. Can't just take it off. There are rules. There's all this thing. There's rules. There's reputations. Well, we need to completely gut this thing. This what was it? The transplant. Another one of these like the transplant. What was it? Trying to think of the word that I'm looking for. The ones that are in charge of deciding whether something is. This is where I completely lose my words.
The transplant agency, like the one in charge of accrediting people.
That's right. And then he said that, and there's this professor, as he called him at the end. Oh, it looks like the great professor pissed his pants because this professor was too concerned with their reputation. Well, people think they won't know what to trust anymore. We have to maintain this agency. So it's so entrenched, and you're just. And to the point where you can really give up, and it's amazing that these guys just keep going. They keep pushing, whether it's Catalan or whether it's the health minister Vlad. They keep pushing, but at the end, I mean, it's all for naught. But because the Social Democrats won, and the dark ages will continue.
I know. I don't know if that professor was just scared about his reputation, though. I think he was scared of dying because even the journalists, they got that threat against their family. And the threat that they said, the people told them that they had just come up against unscrupulous mobsters, I believe was the word they used. But that professor wasn't just worried about reputation. Like even the guy who owned Hexapharma, who when it came out that he had been diluting the products, he committed suicide and ran his car into a tree. I don't want to go full like Epstein on you here, but I'm like, there's no way that dude just committed suicide. In the short amount of time I saw him on screen, I was like, this guy's not killing himself.
No. And then they that was the moment with the television dopes who were talking to Catalan about how he was just depressed. You don't know what's in his mind, and it was so. It's just the fact that everybody's playing along. There's so many people who are obviously being bribed. So many people who wanted to maintain their positions, and it is the kind of environment where the worst people can rise to the top and completely exploit that whole setup that government has. It's
that
exhausting.
Second scene that destroyed me, the fire destroyed me. The second scene hits you about 40 minutes later when you think we've just gotten into the bureaucracy and the mundanity of trying to solve a crime and fix a political system. You're like, okay, thank God the horrific stuff is behind us. And then they show the patients in the hospital with literal maggots infesting their still alive bodies. These patients are still alive, but because the disinfectant is so diluted, bacteria is thriving. Maggots are eating their alive bodies. That hit me. I was like, whoa, we're still in this nightmare? Like, I thought we were doing paperwork now.
Yeah. Horror movie. I know there's another, that was like a horror movie moment where you just see it in like on the side of someone's head. And it's not just the septic element. It's also the fact that the negligence of the staff and the health managers who are being bribed. You mentioned the fellow with the car crash. I mean, he had an offshore company. His whole deal was he was buying at the market price, but then selling it kind of to himself through the offshore company at like 10 times, 7 times, whatever the price. So that way he made money that way. Then they diluted it further so he could make even more money. And that was one of the things that doctor who was showing that video of the maggots was saying that she was talking to her mother about how, because the minister said, what about the humanity of these doctors? And he's like, yeah, my mother said that they're not humans anymore. All they care about is money. And I just thought, like, dear Lord, I mean, like it really is like a rot that goes through the whole, like once the rot starts, like everybody just loses hope and they just say, I might as well make a buck.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not going to be a victim of this system. If this is how we're playing the game, I'm going to come out on top. And here's how far the greed and avarice stretches. It's even after the collective fire, that woman was telling them they just bought everything, put purchase orders on literally everything that had been on a waiting list for like 3 years because they were like, oh, okay, this is our chance to say we're making changes in the hospital. We're going to buy all this stuff. But again, not to help the patients. They were like, hey, here's an opportunity. This fire is in the collective imagination of the people and on the public consciousness. So we're going to make it seem like we're making changes, but it's an even greater opportunity to make money. Like even a fire that killed all these citizens was not enough to make them go, hey, maybe we're doing something wrong here. It was another opportunity to make money.
I mean, again, I don't know if that's one thing that there are a couple things that, I think about myself in these scenarios as we do when we watch these things, whether it's being stuck in a, by the way, that was the beginning, right? Was the fact that there were no fire exits in that, concert venue. So that was the first corruption, was the fact that somehow someone down the line in the government had allowed that, was probably bribed and allowed that. So that was when you start to say, oh, it's about that. It's about the corruption in terms of like, whoever it is that's in charge of that sort of thing. But, so I'm thinking like, what would it feel like to be stuck in that scenario, the nightmare, kind of like trying to maybe reenact it in my mind, but also try to avoid it. This like kind of going back and forth between those two. And then the other thing is like living in that kind of corrupt scenario. I mean, we have corruption here to some extent, but to be faced with corruption time and time again, and like to not, like, how do you have the energy to push back the way these guys do quietly too? It's strange. Like Catalan and Vlad were both really kind of quiet, mild-mannered. It almost made me think about how this populist agenda goes along with like brash, they talk in a way that they seem outraged, and yet the people who are actually on the side of truth and who are clear-minded, who have some ethics, they tend to be much more soft-spoken, and which is a shame in a way, because it feels like they get drowned out, as they did get drowned out, as the the minister's dad said, it's going to be another 30 years before they come out of this. And then he says, well, I don't know, history shows that it could take longer than that. Oh, Lord.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that scene at the end with his dad telling him, get the hell out of here. Go back to Vienna. Work there. You shouldn't be here. That scene was actually encouraging to me for the reason that, when this country, America, was swept up in Trump hysteria. Not that it's completely gone away, but you remember, I mean, as recently as a year ago, but 2016 to 2020, when it felt like a disease almost that you couldn't escape from.
Yeah.
Older people in my life, not even necessarily American, Canadian older people in my life were really readily swept up in that. And I almost felt like their brains were almost like ready to be manipulated by the social media propaganda or even mainstream propaganda. So it was encouraging for me that his father, who is obviously an older gentleman, wasn't swept up in it. He was a voice of reason saying, what the hell's going on? I was like, oh, that's kind of like flipping it on its head. So
yeah, that was kind of encouraging in a way, but also the fact that you say like that was then about the Trump era. I mean, nothing's over, right? I mean, that's the other thing. It's not like a switch was flipped and everybody changed their minds. I mean, no. I almost feel like, to use the fire analogy, I almost feel like, all there needs to be is some kind of spark, and that who knows, like, if there's something enough that gets both sides angry enough, and then angry at each other enough, that then it just becomes that powder keg situation where I don't know, is there some cultural civil war that turns into a real civil war? That's what we were thinking in the beginning, and now I'm thinking, like, I don't know if that's necessarily going to go away. That thought that's not lost on me.
Yeah, I mean, they literally rioted the Capitol and broke in, and that didn't start a civil war.
Yes.
I mean,
no,
it's
it didn't.
tough.
No, it didn't. But sometimes these things build. That's like, sometimes it's like, okay, that happened. Oh, it's okay. Oh, that happened. Oh, okay, it's maybe getting. Oh, that happened. Okay, it's getting all right. When's and then something happened. I don't know. I'm just I'm always paranoid, and because the idea of any kind of a peace has to be fought for. That's what history has taught us, and I'm not a fighter. No, but to go to your point of, like, the people who are usually fighting on the right side of things are more mild-mannered and soft-spoken. Well, if you look at the environmental crisis we find ourselves in, Greta Thunberg is not mild-mannered. She's lashing out at the people in charge, and she's right in front of them at these summits saying, you are hurting our planet. And, like, she's being very direct and not that polite, still not doing anything. I just feel like it doesn't matter if you're mild-mannered or if you're a loud, brash yeller. It doesn't matter if the people who control the resources and the government want to do something. There's not a lot you can do. Yes, I mean, I don't know. It feels it comes always back down to human nature, that you can fight, and there's some in some cases or over time the good will triumph, but then again, there's just a lot of people who are opportunistic who really don't give a shit about ethics, who are, amoral mobster thugs, who will just and they're constantly working to try to figure out how they can make a buck. You have to then constantly work just to try to, always look for these little holes that they're trying to exploit. I'm like, I don't. This is why I do what I do, and I'm not in, the government, whether it's in politics or in law or whatever. I don't think I have the constitution to just sustain that energy.
No. And also, just to flip the script, soft-spoken people can also get away with a lot of bad things because of how soft-spoken they are. So it can work the opposite way, where you trust them because of how mild-mannered they seem, and really they're just, they're using that as a guise to hurt you even more. That is true. And, a lot of people are easily manipulated too, in terms of, like, if you sound like you're sincere and you sound like these things matter, I mean, it was, these guys that were, I love that moment too, where there was the two fellas from another part of the government who were just pretty much, again, just more people saying that, well, we're looking into it, or I don't remember what it was, but I remember there was that moment where the guy was trying to swat the fly that landed on the other guy. Yeah. In the press conference,
it was like the fly landed on him. I thought. I mean, well, talk about it kind of obviously reminded me of Pence when the fly landed on him during the debates. It's this idea that it's like the universe steps in and creates a little symbolism. I mean, these guys clearly rotten, and also the fly landing on them, could plant some maggots, just like somebody in that hospital got.
Talk about a futile gesture. This is one fly. There's literally human beings rotting from maggots in your hospital.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. Another little bit of symbolism in that one too. There's just so many moments in this film that it really is hard to kind of get through all of them.
I was worried about Vlad the whole time because he seemed so good.
His life.
But I was like, when are they going to pull the rug out on this guy? Because he seemed like his heart was in the right place, but I didn't trust anybody. I
feel like I was thinking that too. I mean, sometimes there's that moment with that doctor who showed the maggots. She was saying, they said, we'll protect you. We won't basically divulge her identity. And I thought, yeah, this is a movie, huh? They got a camera right there. It's a documentary. I mean, we're seeing her right now. I don't know what you're talking about, but I think that with Vlad, it was almost like it's almost like there's so much corruption. They didn't even bother with him. They're like, whatever. He'll come and go. We're
Yeah.
What do they? They don't need to kill him. They'll just work around him.
Yeah, he's not going to do anything. After the Social Democrats won at the end of this movie, because they were ousted from power after the fire, in large part due to the fire and their ineffectiveness and corruption, the people voted them out. And then at the end of this movie, very shortly after, they were voted back in by a wide margin, their largest margin ever. So Vlad, the health minister, lost his job, which the writing was on the wall. He knew it was going to happen. But I was reading up on it after. He's the health minister again. Since 2019, he's in the same position he occupied in this movie.
Oh,
and Romania's
cool.
come under a lot of fire for their handling of COVID, and all these same sorts of problems are rearing their ugly heads again. And I think their numbers haven't been great during COVID. So I mean, I think it just goes to prove either he's just kind of fallen into the same system, or he's still trying his best but banging his head against a big old corrupt wall.
Yeah, I think I would probably expect the latter of those two. I think that that the guy's intention was good. The fact that he was previously a patients' rights advocate was a good start. That, versus the guy before who had the stupid extraterrestrial line. He was a hospital manager. He might as well be a hotel manager. Another hospital manager before he got that job. So clearly on the inside, corrupt as anybody, because those managers were all getting bribed. So at least there's that. I mean, there was some hope, but really what we didn't mention was what I found. Was particularly, there was so much absurdity in this. Even Vlad, he would laugh at the absurdity of things being said, like lies that were being said on television. He kind of laughed them off absurdly. But the absurdity of the fact that this all started because of a journalist who was was part of a sports magazine. It was like Sports Illustrated broke the story. Yeah. And I mean, and he said that just goes to show the state of the press in Romania. That's who had to do it.
Yeah.
He was steadfast. He was
because the regular members of the media are like those jackass, the guy who on that talk show was talking about the suicide with him, trying to blame his suicide on his reporting. Those are the Tucker Carlson sons of bitches who are regularly running the media. So it took an outsider like the sports magazine to come in without those constraints and corruption and all that.
But that's the issue I actually have with, because those are the reputable media. They're the ones who are corrupted. This whole idea of embedded journalists and all that. I mean, that's a corruptible scenario, and it made me think, like, you subscribe to the New York Times, right? You like to get that paper every Sunday. And I was considering, that sounds like a nice habit to have, to be informed and to, read a good hard copy paper. But then I was reminded by the fact that when all this happened with the WMDs leading up to the Iraq War, they were just right there with everybody else. I mean, there was so few people. When I was in Canada looking down in America, thinking, what is happening down there? Why is it nobody sees what's clearly a setup? It's plain as day, and yet even the most reputable journalists are going along with it. And then again, they had embedded journalists in Iraq, and I just thought, this seems like it seems Orwellian. It seems like there's something that nobody's seeing, and here's this big democracy apparently. So I don't know. I feel like there's a couple of reputable sources, but I still don't trust every. And I'm not one of these like, the MSM, the mainstream media, but I don't know if you could see that happen. Well, who can you trust?
Agreed. Yeah, I try to keep in mind that even the New York Times is biased while I'm reading it, but I take it, I'd rather learn about it and then try to form my own opinions rather than have my head in the sand and not learn anything. But I totally agree with you. Even like, I'm wading into water here that I'm not well versed in, but even the way that the media has really treated Biden with kid gloves because they're just so happy that Trump's not there anymore. To me seems a little like, well, we still have to hold his feet to the fire. I mean, I'm as happy as some of these clearly Democratic, left-leaning journalists are that the old guy's gone. But that's not your job. Your job is to still hold the people in power accountable. So, but then I also see it going the opposite way, where people are like being too hard on Biden about things that are like, you wouldn't have been this hard on the other guy about, like, if he makes a gaffe when he's speaking. It's like, this other guy made 1 million gaffes a speech and it was a joke. And now we're like, oh, this guy's got dementia. So, I mean, I think what it boils down to is journalists are human as well, and they have bias. So even a large organization like New York Times or whatever media organization, it's still going to come down. You know, Fox News, for example, Roger Ailes set that whole agenda, or Rupert Murdoch. So it's not some humanless entity. It's still humans making the decision. So you kind of have to be cognizant of that, no matter what. But it's hard to be thinking that everything you read, you can't be like, who wrote this? What is the bias? What angle are they coming from? Yeah. It's hard to not be swept up in it.
Whereas my solution is to not read. I don't like to.
That's a pretty good idea.
You know? I find that TikTok, I have very little bias when I have absolutely no knowledge of current events.
You know, I've been so busy moving and everything that I haven't read the paper in like 3 weeks. I know nothing about what's going on in the world right now. I'm okay.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to that. It goes both ways. Obviously, if you're not informed enough, then, people will take advantage of your ignorance. But then again, to be too swept up in things that aren't truly going to affect you, and that's bringing you down to the point where you're not functioning properly, that's not great either. But, with that 4 weeks of a delivered paper to your door, couldn't come at a better time, because you can very good for wrapping glasses when you're moving.
Exactly. It's useful. Yeah. You want to totally. Get into the final question?
You can read while you're packing. You could catch up on the news while you're packing. It's a wonderful resource.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God, anyway. They assassinated the Haitian prime minister a month ago? That's crazy.
Also, this glass has a bit of a chip. You know what? I'll just toss that one.
You want to get into the final question?
You know what we should do? I just thought, this just came up to in my mind. We should probably start with the 3 questions.
I'm glad you thought of that.
Yeah. Shall I begin?
Do it. You have to ask me.
Yeah.
I can tell you're taking the reins this episode. I like it. I'm going to sit back.
I know. I thought you might enjoy this. Here's what I'm wondering. What did you learn, DJ?
I'm glad you asked, Alex. And what I learned, and this is very important, I want you to listen to me carefully. I want everybody at home to listen to me carefully here. When people commit suicide and it's questionable, people really err on the side of, we don't need to dig into this too deep. They committed suicide. It's way too easy to fake people's suicides, as we saw from this Hexapharma guy. There's no way that guy killed himself, in my opinion. So I'm putting this out here. What I learned is you really need to let the world know that you would not commit suicide. Until stated otherwise, I need to let everybody know, if you see me dead and it looks like it might have been a suicide, I want to let you know it was not a suicide. Investigate further. I'm telling you right now, I would not kill myself. So I just need to, I feel like a lot of these people who have been suicided didn't put this out there in the world. So I'm putting it out there. I wouldn't kill myself. Look deeper. That's what I learned.
Well, I'll tell you, DJ, that's good to know. But, you want to leave your options open. You don't want to just say something like that right out. I mean, sometimes it's good to have an escape hatch.
Well, I'll let you know if things change in my mind.
Please keep me abreast.
You remember Monty Scott back in Toronto, comedian?
Yeah.
He had a great joke about how if he ever committed suicide, he would just like blame a random person in his suicide note just to make it intriguing. I love that joke where it's just like, this is on you, Jim Miller. And Jim Miller's like, what the hell did I do? I didn't even know this guy. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, actually, somebody who annoyed you slightly, you get back at them by having them investigated after your death. That's not a bad idea. Me? What did I learn? Glad that I asked. Hey,
this is the job. If you're taking the reins, you just got to make these decisions on your own.
I know. I'm realizing this now. It feels good. What did I learn? I mean, obviously, I didn't know that much about Romania. I didn't realize, the corruption of it, and just that. I guess you can make a difference even if you are just in a writing for some sports rag. You can still speak truth to power, and also keep fighting the fight. I guess I don't know, man. I just like the populist agenda that's rising up. It's disheartening to see it everywhere. Like you see, it's like, oh, I don't know much about Romania. What's happening over there? Oh, there too, huh? Oh, God. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's just. Would everybody just not be so easily manipulated? Could everybody just do me that favor? Anyway, that's not really learning anything. It's more just asking for people to change. How about the next thing? What
is the next
What did
thing?
you feel?
Well, I felt sad the whole time. There was no relief. Like, even the woman the young lady who was burned horribly, who was a ray of sunshine, she just said, all I can do is be positive, and I forget who said it. Might have been Vlad, but they were like, no, you can be negative if you want. And she was like, no, I have to keep pushing forward. It was like, even that, like, beacon of hope that she tried to provide. And this is no disrespect to her, but I didn't feel hope from it. I still felt sadness for her and what was taken from her, and the fact that she had to push through the sadness and try to be hopeful, because it wasn't right what happened to her, or the family that lost their son. And his burns were not even as severe as hers. The dad mentioned that at one point, but because of the diluted disinfectant, he died agonizingly in the hospital. That the movie ends with them going to his grave and singing a song on the way back from his tombstone, and just, I mean, I felt terrible, man. I felt terrible this whole movie, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I want to take in the full human experience with this show that we're doing, and I'm happy that I watched it. But holy shit, man, it was a lot to take.
I'm with you there. I also believe that the documentary required more comic relief, because that was tough to get through. If I can, a little tip, a pointer for the documentarian. Add some gags. I mean, just to let it help us get through it. A couple of gags, a couple of quick, funny sight gags, a little something. No, actually, by the way, I realized that we talk about these documentaries. We never mention who makes them. We should probably get better at that. Maybe I should quickly, because I'm talking about the guy who made it. I mean, this is the whole reason we saw this, is because there was somebody who told a story well. Interesting, telling a story that well with no commentary, nothing. It's just one scene after another. Nobody talking. Good point. I read that nobody's talking to the camera, right? Because who would you trust anyway? Because if somebody's talking to the camera, it's because you want to hear some inside scoop. Everybody's corruptible. But yeah, this guy, what was his name? Alexander Nanau. I may be pronouncing it incorrectly, but at least solid first name. I know that much. And so
shout out to him. Doing
shout
the
out
Lord's
to
work.
Nanau. Yeah, that was. It was good. I mean, look, it was nominated for a reason. That was a very strong thing. That was really one of the tougher things to sit through. And again, this is one of the benefits of this podcast for both of us, is that we would not have. We had to. Maybe you would have even turned it off. Maybe we'd say it's too much. I can't do this. It's it's good to force these things upon yourself.
100%. Even just learning things about, I mean, the hospital situation, I was like, I didn't really think about what goes into treating burn victims in terms of disinfectants and all these things. And you just realize, I mean, even to draw the parallel to COVID now, I know we tried our best for the most part to salute the frontline workers and the healthcare workers and all that. But, I mean, what a job. Like, you're literally saving people every day of your life.
It's exhausting.
And I'm saving people any day of my life. So a glimpse into what it takes for these people to effectively do their jobs was good. It was sobering.
Yeah, it made me want to drink. Just opposite of sobering.
There's that comic relief we're looking for.
There you go. Jeez. Hey, I got a question for you. Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? Alex, I think we go to Romania we topple the government, we make some changes. No, I don't have
I can't.
the constitution for that, as you alluded to earlier. No, where do we go from here? I think, I don't know. I don't know specifically because I'm not going to Romania. And I'm sure I know there's rampant corruption in our, adopted countries of America and our home nations of Canada. Can I just draw a parallel here? Even in recent years, the amount that we're learning about how badly Canada mistreated its Aboriginal people. That, Canada, we have a tendency to really pat ourselves on the back and be like, man, aren't we great? We're the peacekeepers of the world. And then to learn about just how terribly we've treated such a large, important section of our population, the Indigenous people, is it just shows you that even in seemingly good countries, terrible things can really be swept under the rug, and if they don't want you to know about it, you're not going to know about it. So I guess where we go from here is we open our eyes a little bit and not assume that good people are all good and that bad people are all bad.
Yeah, I guess that's nobody gets to pat themselves on the back because we're all sinners.
There you go.
I don't know. I clearly started to break out into some kind of a preacher's rant. Where do we go from here? I mean, I guess be vigilant. I mean, some people might say that this is the problem with having healthcare that's government run, right? That's what they would say. And I mean, it depends. Again, it's all about being vigilant. Well, it's not just because it's like whether it's privately run or government run, everything's corruptible. So
yeah, I'm not going to trust Amazon over the government.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, seriously, at least the government. It's like the people who are out there to try to profit generally don't think in terms of the greater good. I think that's the, and so if you find yourself a businessman, a capitalist, and you're looking to make a buck while doing something like that, then clearly that's going to come first. It always does. It's always the stockholders and all that come first. That's again. I came back to this. I said that I want to watch The Corporation. We should watch that sometime soon. It's an older documentary, but it's been updated. I think maybe the second one I'm curious to see as well. But that's interesting. I'm not going to get into it, but just this idea that corporations are like psychopaths. We can get into that. But yeah, there's psychopaths out there. Keep your eye on them. And also, by the way, one of the guys, the guy who was like most benefited from it, had a big ugly house, and he looked like a thug, and he was driving around his Mercedes. The reason why the accountants told on him was because he was talking trash to them. He was shitty to them. It wasn't because of the actual. That's the thing is, people think so much of themselves. It's not because of their they were trying to do some undo some injustice. It was because he was like, oh yeah, you can talk to me like that? I'm taking you down. That's all that was. So
you can let hundreds of people die, but you call me a jerk. You know,
I'm not. I won't stand for it. And that's. I think that's why people who actually do advocate for others like that, like Vlad, you got to tip your hat because you're actually putting that much effort into something just for others. That's where I go from here. I really got to get better at that. I got to think of other people more than myself, DJ.
I agree with you, totally. I'm going to start.
I really
next
found
year.
my way into that. Yeah.
All right. Well, Alex, that was collective, and it was a emotional journey that I'm happy I went on, although it wasn't fun while I was on the journey. What are we watching next week?
Next week.
Another? Are we going to be crying again?
Isn't that? Don't I ask that question in this episode? Hey, DJ, what are we watching next week?
We're watching. What's it called? The Story of Plastic.
The Story of Plastic. It's I just saw it come up on my Instagram feed. Yeah, and I think it won an Emmy or something to that effect. So it came up on my Instagram feed, and I thought, let's learn a little bit about plastic. Well, I don't think it's going to be good. It's not going to be like that uncle in in The Graduate that told Dustin Hoffman's character to plastics are the future. Not anymore.
No, but they kind of are because they're not going anywhere.
It's just true, actually. Yeah.
It's a bleak future.
Single-used plastics are definitely not going anywhere, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's next week. I mean, you've taken the reins the whole time. If you want to close us out here, Alex.
Well, yeah, so that's what we're going to be tuning into next week. So please join us on another episode of what we like to call Alex and DJ Watch a Doc. Now, I'm Alex.
I'm DJ. See you later.
Catch you later. Bye-bye.